Hey everyone, an annual tradition continues with the North Dakota High School Playoff Roundtable. We've never thought of a shorter name, I guess, but as you can tell, we have a different look this year. It's going to be a little Zoom interview action, which is because of COVID. And Jody Norstedt here with Midco Sports Network, along with Brad Anderson from 103.9 The Truck and Chase Miller from 740 The Fan. And guys, let's start with the uniqueness of this season. We knew going in that COVID was going to rear its ugly head and affect games and really affect communities in the world. But as it relates to high school football in particular, we've seen it shuffle schedules up, and now we've seen two seasons come to an end prematurely. And St. John had to cancel their game or forfeit their game in the first round. And then Oaks this past week had to forfeit their game scheduled for Saturday against Langdon Edmore Munich. What have been your biggest takeaways, I guess, from the 2020 high school football season as it pertains to the coronavirus?
I think the big thing is I think we all kind of knew the risks going in, that people, I think, were willing to keep going with the season anyway. I think just to give fans and players and kids and everyone involved a chance. And I think they knew the risk. And I think if you even asked Greg Dobitz in Oaks, or you asked the people in St. John, would you do it all over again? I'm sure the answer would be yeah. I mean, we knew the risk. We were certainly hoped that we would be rewarded with a season, and I think overall, granted, it didn't end the way you'd like, but I think they would do it all over again if they had the chance. And I think there's just, the coaches I've talked to, and that's always a question I ask every week is, has this been anything like you've ever had to deal with? And it's like, no, but you know what? He says, we're willing to do what we have to do to make this work. And I think you just have a greater appreciation every week for something that you probably took for granted forever.
Yeah, it's definitely been a unique season, guys. There's no doubt about it. Let's chat about some of the games, though. In the 3A playoffs, we have 6 of the 8 teams back from last year, including 2 rematches from last year, with West Fargo trying to go out and beat Bismarck again, and then Mandan trying to go to Davies again and beat the Eagles. Chase, the road teams won both those games a year ago between West Fargo and Mandan. Who do you think has the better opportunity to do it again this year?
Well, probably just because I've seen West Fargo once or twice, I'm going to go with West Fargo because Isaiah Hoos is a beast. He is an absolute load. But Bismarck Century held him under 100 yards last Wednesday in the end of the regular season out in the WDA. So if West Fargo can take a similar script with that 5-2 defense that Jay Gibson likes, you got Casey Ortiz, you got Wurtzfeld up front, and Houston Visto, which those guys can wreak a lot of havoc. And if they can keep Isaiah Hoos from the 15, 20, 30-yard gains and just limit him to the 3-4, 3-4, one big one, but that doesn't go to the house, West Fargo has a shot. Also, 2 guys that we haven't talked about but have made special teams plays, defensive plays, and offensively, Hagerly and Bierenkot. Those 2 are quick. They're fast as lightning. They can make a lot of things happen on any side of the football. And then the biggest key to me, Jody and Brad, if West Fargo gets a win, we know Jay Gibson's going to want to throw the ball 15, 20 times in a game. That's part of his game plan. But if they can get Parker Nelson rushing, and if they can get Jancy with the QB rollouts, and he makes the right read, whether it's tuck and run or throw it down the field, that is going to be a key in this football game. You know what you're going to get with athletes in this one on both sides of the ball. But at the end of the day, if West Fargo can go for a 3rd straight postseason, or the 3rd one in 4 years, and try to knock off Bismarck after winning in 2017 at home against Will Madler in the semis, last year going out there and beating these demons, and Jay Gibson and Mark Gibson, there's no stone unturned. They seem to play each other every stinking year in the playoffs or in the regular season. I'm going to give it to West Fargo, though, just because I think if you can control Isaiah Hoos enough and force Bismarck to throw the football, that could be a key in that game.
It's going to be an interesting battle. You got to believe Bismarck is going to be pretty fired up after that loss to Century to want to go out and try to steamroll the team. But this is a Packers team, like you mentioned, pretty hard to do that against the way they play defensively. And, of course, the passing game, Bierenkot and Hagerly were great last year in this matchup, and they're really hitting their stride this season. Brad, Jamestown ended the regular season with a 3-game losing streak, and now they play a top seed in Cheyenne. I would have to think the Mustangs are licking their chops in this matchup.
Not only do they lose 3 straight, they gave up 145 points in 3 games. And granted, you're facing the other 3 playoff teams from the West, but And they didn't have a whole lot to play for against Mandan, and I know they were shorthanded. They were without their quarterback, and Bill Norstedt, I think, had some COVID issues as well, so he didn't make the trip. And in Cheyenne, maybe that little break with COVID maybe kind of gave them a little bit of a time to heal up in a few things, and they've looked sharp the last couple of weeks. They shut out over Davies, and they took care of Central. And Warren team complete 7 or 8 passes and throws 4 touchdowns on Saturday. I mean, they. And defensively, I mean, we've talked about, in the past about how good they are defensively. I think they give up, other than the shootout game with Shanley, I mean, they pitched a couple of shutouts. They give up about 11 points a game. I mean, it just seems like the recipe. I mean, they're facing a Jamestown team that's kind of, maybe limping into the postseason a little bit. And I think you're right. I think they are kind of licking their chops here. And it's like, it's just business as usual for the Mustangs.
Chase Century has now won 19 in a row. Shanley comes in. They kind of have that high-flying passing attack that can help maybe in a game like this. Do you give the Deacons any chance at pulling off this upset on the road?
Well, there's an avalanche coming in Century, and that's Cade Garcia running behind Andrew Langang, Jody. So the real question is for Shanley, you got to stack the box. You got to force Bismarck Century, very reminiscent in the earlier game out in the bowl coming up on Friday with West Fargo and Bismarck, where we said West Fargo has to force, Gunnar Swanson and Bismarck how to throw the ball. It's the same thing here with Bismarck Century with Schaffner having to throw the football. If Century throws it 15 or 20 times in a game, that tells me Shanley is wrapping up Cade Garcia enough at the line and limiting the big throws. The one thing I will say about Bismarck Century going up against the Shanley offense is Shanley has a lot of weapons on the outside. John Morris, Kochman. If Devine can play, a couple weeks ago talking with Troy Mather, he mentioned that Aiden Devine, the running back, might be able to be back in the postseason. If that's the case, that'll be a big lift. But at the end of the day, Shanley's offensive line has to go against Schweigert, has to go against Burkhardt, has to go up against Langang. That is going to be a tall order. But if they can get the ball out quick, Shanley is either a 3-and-out offense or 1, 2, 3 plays and boom, they go 70 yards. So it's kind of feast or famine. Jody, if they can stop the run enough and get a couple of big plays down the field offensively, maybe Shanley can have a shot, but they're going to have to win the battle of turnover and field position to knock off the defending state champs.
It's going to be tough. Let's move to AA. Hillsboro Central Valley earns the 1 seed from the East and hosts Watford City. Central Cass will travel to Beulah. St. Mary's will try to beat Devil's Lake for a 3rd time this season, guys, and Kindred welcomes Hazen to town. Brad, you know that Central Cass team well. How do the Squirrels match up with Beulah?
It's a good matchup. I mean, they're going to have to get their playmakers going right away with Deutsch and Procknell. And the other thing they have to do, I mean, I think they've seen some style of football. I mean, it's unique what Beulah does, but what Valley City and Hillsboro Central Valley tried to do to you is there's some similarities there, and they played very well against both those teams. They got to play with the lead. It seemed like they've been chasing the score for 3 or 4 weeks, and they got to limit turnovers. It seemed like the turnovers have come at really inopportune times for them. And I know one thing that Tommy Butler has talked about the last couple of weeks, and they finally did it against Wahpeton, is finish your drives, finish things in the red zone. And they finally did it in the 4th quarter. And they, not only they got the win, but I think they wanted to avoid St. Mary's. Now they're on the opposite side of the Saints, and Beulah's tough, but I think they feel like they can go out there and get a win.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important part is trying to avoid St. Mary's until you get to the potable for a lot of these teams. Chase, give us a few players to watch in 2A.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the Kindred Vikings, and first it's going to be, they've had a topsy-turvy season with COVID as well, only playing 6 games, but Ethan McKinney, I mean, the senior tight end, he's at 6'3", 6'4", Max McQuillan. Those two have been a nice 1-2 combination. You mentioned Hillsboro Central Valley. Brad, I kind of see Sam Preston, Gavin Mitzel. If that tandem can get going for the Burros, that's going to help a Coach Olson team to try to make it back to the Dakota Bowl. And then can we get St. Mary's defense? Like, I don't want to say one particular player. They've only given up 27 points in 8 games. That's 3 points. That's a field goal per contest. So let's give out the entire Saints defense as something to watch. But Colin Curl, I mean, when he has the ball offensively, you look at a box score on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and you look what Bismarck St. Mary's did. Curl's got his fingers all over the box score in some capacity in Class 2A football, and that's before he mentioned anybody out in Beulah as well. So I think at the end of the day, St. Mary's defense, though, Jody, as a group, is definitely someone to watch out for.
Isn't it something that St. Mary's, the rough year last season, and now they come back and they are the team to beat. They've been a lot of fun to watch this fall. Well, let's move to Class A. The playoffs got underway last week, guys. Only 2 games were decided by less than 20 points. That was second-seeded Lisbon's 38-24 win over Harvey-Wells County. And then third-seeded Belva had a challenge from Bowman County. They won 28-20. It went chalk, though, but obviously the big news here is COVID forcing that Oaks game to be a forfeit against Langdon Edmore Munich, who gets into the semifinals for, by the way, a 5th consecutive season. That is remarkable to be in the Final Four that many times in a row. The Cardinals will host the winner of Shiloh Christian and Bishop Ryan. Grafton travels to Lisbon for the 2nd year in a row for a playoff game, and Belva plays Trinity for the 2nd time in a month. Guys, I think all 3 of these games have potential to be really good. Bishop Ryan, you look at guys like Jackson Feller, Logan Merck, back from last year's team that reached the Dakota Bowl. I know Shiloh's playing well, but the Lions, they're going to be tough. The Skyhawks, keep in mind, they started 0-2, and they haven't lost a game since. They had wins over Killdeer, Bowman County, New Salem, Glen Ullin as well. And if Bishop Ryan wins, that could set up a championship rematch from last year. They'd play Langdon Edmore Munich again, this time in the semifinal round. But Brad, Lisbon, let's go to this one. They looked a little bit rusty playing in their first game in 22 days in that first round win that we talked about a little bit ago. Any concern for the Broncos going up against Grafton this week?
Maybe a little bit, but I think maybe just to shake the rust off, maybe they kind of feel like they're kind of back in the groove a little bit against, a Grafton team. And I think they're probably looking at, a Grafton team that, I think is pretty bad, pretty battle tested. They really, so I think that plays a factor. But I think, Lisbon probably just shaking the rust off of that. And I think now they're probably back in a groove. And really with the type of football and the style of football that they run, it's very basic and very simple. It's not like you're doing a lot of different schemes. It's pretty much, Schultz left, Schultz right, or Sowers. It's simple, but it's so effective for them. So I think, it's not like there's a lot of intricacies with it. It's pretty standard what they try to do.
Yeah, for Grafton, I would imagine the key is just try to force some turnovers on that offense. Otherwise, they're going to be able to run it down your throat. And you get into the offense's hands for Grafton, and you have Esgar Rios back there, Landon Wanarovich, the quarterback, throwing to Steven or the other Garza. They have some playmakers on offense for sure. If someone left all 4 or all 3 of these matchups in a bowl like candy on Halloween night, and this is my Halloween theme getting at you guys because it's going to be Halloween on Saturday, I'd pick Twix if it was a candy for the record, but I'd pick Belva and Trinity for the matchup because I think about the playmakers, Gage Florence, Jersey Selzer, Nathaniel Gillick. Chase, this is going to be a really good matchup.
Yeah, it really is because you got 2 teams who played each other earlier in the season. Belva won at Dickinson by 5 points, 26-21. So the question is, we have a lot of matchups here that might be a second time around in Class AA, 1 or 2 in Class A, and the same in 9-man where we've seen teams play each other earlier in the season. So can the Jersey Selzer, who it seems like every stinking year, it'll last like 10 years it feels like, but it's not. But it feels like a decade that we mentioned his name once we get to this time of the year. Also, Gage Florence, it's a nice 1-2 combination for Belva. We don't give enough credit to the offensive line either for the Aggies, but they haven't made the Dakota Bowl since 2010. So this is an opportunity to get one step closer. On the flip side, Dickinson Trendy has made the Dakota Bowl since 2006. So one of these 2 teams will get a step closer to trying to erase that decade plus of not making a state title. And then Nathaniel Jellick. Here's a dude that's got over 1,100 rushing yards on the season for Dickinson Trendy. As much as we talk about Selzer for, Belva, Jellick's the same thing here for Dickinson Trendy. They use him a lot of different ways. They can play action with him, use him as a decoy, so to speak. So this is a good 1-2 combination with a lot of stars without question, Jody, on the football field.
Yeah, Gillick had another big game last week, and he's had a lot of big games this season, won one of our MidcoSN game balls earlier this year. Now, we saw a trio of road teams win in the 9-man playoffs. Beach and Linton HMB showing the strength of that Region 4, but then Grant County Flasher, the Region 4 champ, loses to TGU. So this is how the bracket looks for the Elite 8. Cavalier hosts high-scoring Mayport CG. Beach plays at Kidder County in a Region 4 rematch. And then second-seeded Lemoore Litchfield Marion plays its first playoff game, hosting North Border, and TGU travels to Linton HMB. Brad, what's your upset special this week in 9-man? You tried to get a lot of upsets last week in our pick. What's your upset this week in 9-man?
I talked myself out of one that actually happened. I'm sorry to Coach Zero out in Beach. I had you picked, and then I changed my mind. But I don't know if it's really be a huge upset, but Mayport CG and Cavalier. I mean, what's the over/under going to be on points on this game? I mean, that's I don't think Cavalier has seen something like this all year long, and they've played some pretty good teams. But I mean, just the sheer points that they can put out in a short amount of time, and if you make a mistake, if you make a couple of turnovers here and there, that's going to be huge, I think. But on the other hand, Mayport CG, can you withstand all the different weapons that Cavalier has, and they can come right back at you. I mean, you say you got to slow Cavalier down. So what does that mean? You got to hold them to 30. You got to hold them to 40. I mean, it's kind of curious how many points you're going to need to win. If you needed 60 to get out of the first round, what's it going to take to win on the road against one of the best teams in the state?
Yeah, that should be a good matchup. Chase, North Border, they're a nice story. I know you had that game last week. The way they've turned things around has been impressive, but this is a Lemoore Litchfield Marion team that has played lights out all year, averaging just under 60 points per game.
Yeah, Lemoore's got speed, and oh, by the way, more speed. It doesn't matter on any offensive, defensive, linebackers, running backs, quarterback, defensive backs. They got speed all over the field, and it really starts with Corbin Potts, Colton Ness, Brett Wendell, and then, as we mentioned, you look at their offensive line, they're road graders. I mean, they open up some holes for the Wendells to run through to allow Colton Ness to get down the field. The sophomore came out with 7 receptions, 5 touchdowns in their season opener against Enderlin Maple Valley, and boom, it was like, okay, you're on the scene as a sophomore. But on the opposite side, North Border, it was 2011 since their last playoff win. Ironically, that was against Lemoore Litchfield Marion before they defeated Wyoming Lidgewood last week. And they got a ton of seniors on the squad. They're going to have 7-8 seniors on offense, 7-8 seniors start on defense as well. TJ Cosley, he's got the speed for North Border. Then you got a big Jackson Johnson at 6'4" at a tight end. And then you got Jaden Lean, over 1,000 yards rushing, and he is going to be like a Mike Allstott. Hand him to it left, hand him to it right, let him just grind and pound. The one thing, though, North Border had 3 turnovers, 2 of them deep in the red zone, with their quarterback Cooper White against Wyoming Lidgewood. You're not going to be able to do that against Lemoore Litchfield Marion. You got to finish with 6 if you have an opportunity. To Brad's point with Cavalier and Mayport CG, you're probably going to have to score. I think the least amount of points the Lobos have scored all season was 30. So I look at that 30 parameter, and you're probably going to have to at least get that against this Lobos defense.
Yep, they can put up the points, and they can shut teams down defensively, can that Lemoore Litchfield Marion squad. Chase, back to the Halloween theme. Which player in this 9-man bracket that's still playing would you be most scared of to tackle?
Trade Jacob, because of the numbers that he put up in 3 games in 8 days for the Lions at one particular point. So I think he would be definitely one, just because you look at him and he goes into a hit and he's bouncing off people. He's almost like a bowling ball at times. It's really tough to tackle. So I think I got to give Trade Jacob, but also if I had to snake one in there, just because he slithers around, it'll be Sawyer Satcham from Mayport CG as well. Adam Soul has done such a good job utilizing him this season in a shotgun formation, allowing him with the pass run option. I would go Jacob first, but Satcham with a very close 1B option.
Brad, how about you?
Satcham would be my first pick, but I would say either the Clem boys from Cavalier. If you either go Bryson or Brandon, I think either one is Brandon's 5'10", about 160. Bryson's 6'1", but play a lot bigger than that, and just tough. I mean, I always think of Cavalier. I just think of just tough kids in the past, and in that program over the years, from the days of Rod Oxendahl now to Sandy Laxdal. Both those guys I think it's kind of a microcosm of what that program's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go with some of the guys that you guys already mentioned, but a couple other scary ones would be Tyson Madden out at Beach. The way, I mean, that guy gets a ton of carries every game, and by the fourth quarter, as a defender, you're probably sick of tackling that guy, I would imagine, and that's probably going to be Kidder County this week. Who knows? But you look at a Wolves team that's the defending state champs, and Jonah Harder's back at quarterback. He's miserable to try to get down, and not because of a physical style or anything, but you look at him and Lucas Schumacher when they put on a show earlier this season going head-to-head, the quarterback from Linton HMB. Those two guys, I don't know if they're scary to bring down, but they're just difficult to bring down because they're so elusive. So a lot of great players worth mentioning. Wendell from Lemoore Litchfield Marion, probably another one of those guys you can throw in. Guys, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll do this again next week. And let's hope that we get to the Dakota Bowl with no more teams having to forfeit. I know that was kind of crushing for the teams that have already had to do so. A salute to Oaks and St. John. Great seasons. Disappointing finishes, I know it, but a lot to be proud of for both those programs. Brad and Chase, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next week, boys.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Jody.